Hi everybody, this is a video for everybody working at the Royal Institute of Philosophy. Just to tell you the whole story. 30 years ago I was working on the problem of turbulence inside jet engines, and I bought this book here, Chaos and Nonlinear Dynamics. And to my shock, what I found was that turbulence is not explained by any physics. How could it be? Turbulence is by definition unpredictable. Classical physics is by definition predictable. So you're deep in contradiction. The whole book, in fact, says that basically for anything like biology or chemical reactions which are unpredictable, physics is not appropriate. And he says that physics is not appropriate here. This is a book that looks at the behavior of matter, the same matter that does physics. So what we did as engineers was to say, well, we're looking at this wrongly, because the idea in the Western world is that physics would one day explain everything. That was Newton's hope, but it was only a hope. There's nothing that says that is how it's going to turn out to be. Now, the problem that we have in the West is that we've still clung to that hope, that physics is somehow going to explain biology. That's never going to happen. Number one, biology is by definition adaptable. Classical physics is by definition not adaptable. So it's the same problem again. And Richard Feynman predicted that whoever solved the problem of uniting turbulence and physics would also solve the problem of uniting biology and physics. Well, that turns out to be absolutely true. The writing's been on the wall for a long, long time. With books like this, The Trouble with Physics by Lee Smolin. Basically, physics doesn't even explain physics anymore because it comes in two different kinds of physics, which appear to contradict each other. They don't, and I'll explain why later. And this book here, A World Beyond Physics by Stuart Kauffman. And he says, it's just so obvious. Biology does not reduce to physics. So what we did as engineers was to say, look, if we look at the theory of general relativity, Einstein has thrown out gravity as a force and replaced it with a geometric theory. That is, space and matter obeying the rules of mathematics for no other reason, and that's how the whole universe works. If you take that philosophy, which is embedded in the Eastern philosophy, which is why this was worked out, I had to go and spend 16 years working in Taiwan, then suddenly classical physics, something like a magnetic field, is a geometric disturbance of space caused by the presence of the magnet, and the magnetic field causes the magnet to behave as a magnetic object. Same as general relativity. But when we looked at that, what we found was that as soon as you flip over into having a mathematical causality for the universe, suddenly, if you look at electrical fields, magnetic fields and gravitational fields, they've got the same mathematics underpinning them as quantum mechanics. So if you look at electron orbital shells, they're described by spherical harmonics, and all the fields in classical physics are described by spherical harmonics. So suddenly, physics gets put back together and dethroned as the series of equations that's going to describe everything else. Because if you take mathematics as causality, it explains quantum physics, classical physics, chaos. And that triplet then allows you to explain complexity, the complexity of molecules, the geometries of which are not explained by any physics. And that's going to be a real shock to many chemistry professors. But go and check it out. If you look in the book, Cosmic Onion by Frank Close, he states categorically, the underlying laws of physics do not explain the pattern in a snowflake. They do explain the pattern we see in a raindrop, a sphere. So that's okay. Uniformity, but no complexity. And in the essay, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics, the physicist Eugene Widner ponders why indeed should molecules obediently line up according to the rules of group mathematics. So that should have been talking to us a long, long time ago. And these problems have been showing up in books like that. There are loads of books now, all saying that, look, evolution cannot be happening by chance. And as scientists, we don't believe that it's happening by intervention. Because if you can intervene and do it, you could have put those rules in at the beginning. And we're saying that the universe was fit for purpose at the beginning because it had the rules of chaos on top of the rules of physics. So I've got physics, and then I've got chaos. I've got a harmonic pendulum, then I've got a chaotic pendulum on the top. I've got both sets of rules. The chaotic pendulum is still obeying the laws of physics, just as my body behaves as an object. When I die, I fall over. It also behaves as an animal. And then my higher level of conscious thinking means that I behave as a human being as well. So the fact that objects can behave as much more complex things if you allow mathematics to explain causality in the universe means that we really do have to change our minds. We can't go on with science making no sense to people whatsoever. They don't trust it anymore because biology seems to have nothing at all to do with the science, physics. Well, that's just the old traditional way of looking at things, which has gone. So the students at the college in north of England, at Hull College, have already seen this new model and they can't see what the problem is at all in accepting it. But then that's why we tell the story of the emperor's new clothes. If you're a physics professor and you've grown up all your life thinking like this, it's very, very hard for you to suddenly go, it's like asking somebody to change their religion or give up Christmas. But for a young person who hasn't decided either way, no problem. So this really is going to be a big deal, and the college is going to start inviting people to come and look at the displays that we're going to put on. It's very, very unfair to challenge people in public with new ideas. They need a long time to change their mind, and if you've just put on a display that people can come and walk along and look at it all, and we're going to lay out all the systems of nature from hydrogen up to a human being and put the mathematics underneath so they can see how the whole evolution of matter into stars and elements, then solar systems, and then molecules, and life is actively driven by a combination of quantum physics, physics, and chaos, a triplet of rules, not just one kind of physics or the other. It's an active mechanism that seeks order and complexity, and that order can build up only if the mechanism has some way of conserving information. Now, the solar system has a mechanism which conserves information, so order can build up. So that's the watchmaker, and the watchmaker is not blind. Gravity is just the battery for the clock, so that's why it doesn't make any sense. DNA is the conservation mechanism at the atomic scale, and it conserves information and feeds it back into the system, just as the orbits of the planets feed the information back into the system, and each time gravitational tugs make a little adjustment, it all gets preserved. So that's the watchmaker problem, sorted out once and for all. So we're going to be inviting people to ask questions. It's all been documented, the whole 30-year journey, and it's going to be very interesting, but most of all, it puts hope and trust back in science. There is, however, some mechanisms in biology that don't have any mathematics which explain them. So that bit is beyond the realm of science at the minute. And everybody has to admit it's not explainable by any science. What we do have is a logical, common sense explanation for nature. Just in time, I think. speak to you soon. Bye bye now.